So I think I'll just do a formal introduction and hand over properly. So
Great.
Welcome, colleagues. Welcome if you're attending live, and if you're watching the recording, a very warm welcome as well. Here we are with Discovering Mindfulness, a gentle introduction to the theory and practice of mindful living. And I'll just share that this event is organised by Heart Valve Voice, a charity dedicated to raising awareness of heart valve disease and issues associated with that. And we're very grateful to Will and Callum and the team at Heart Valve Voice for helping to put this event together. I will hand over in a moment to Katie. I'd just like to share, a question for you. What does being in the moment feel like for you? And another question, how can something so simple bring peace and happiness into every day? So the classic image of a seated meditation is only one aspect of the world of mindfulness. And in this session, it's designed to inspire you and give you a brief insight into the richness, variety, and simple fun of living a mindful life. So hopefully we'll be able to explore a range of practices designed to help you to feel calmer, stronger, safer, and less anxious, building resilience and happiness and positivity. And if you've, as we've been discovering through the chat, if you've heard of mindfulness but never experienced it, or maybe you think you can't meditate because your mind or your life is too busy, then you're in the right place to learn. So we'll be able to, hopefully by the end of the session, learn a little bit about what mindfulness is and what it's not, how mindfulness can be used to reduce anxiety, anger, and other strong emotions, and why minding the gap helps you to think creatively and respond rather than react to life, and also which mindful anchors can be used to bring a sense of calm. So just a word about our speaker this evening. Katie Sheen is a fully qualified teacher who's been practicing mindfulness in her own life for over 16 years, including through cancer treatment in 2015. And she's created a gratitude app called Appreciating Windowsills and an online course called Mindfulness for Anxiety. And whilst her website includes free interactive tools to support your first steps into a mindful life, we'll be sharing a link to the website through the course of this evening. Katie is an experienced speaker at conferences large and small and delivers regular mindfulness classes and courses within businesses and for the general public. She describes her style as light and approachable. You will be given plenty of opportunities to ask questions, and we really want you to use the chat tab, use the Q&A tab. Please ask away. The more questions and interaction we have, generally, the better the experience for everybody concerned. And yes, lots of practical ideas, hopefully for you to use straight away, supported by, there will be some handouts that you can access either straight away, or they'll also be in an email that will come along tomorrow. And soulnutrition.org, I'll share a link later. Soulnutrition.org is Katie's website. So Katie, I'll hand over to you now. Thank you so much for giving up some of your valuable time to share with our colleagues this evening.
A pleasure. Well, as you know, mindfulness has completely changed my life, so it's nice to be able to share it with other people. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen, but a couple of times through the presentation I'll reappear back as if by magic, hopefully, if all the tech works. I'm sure it will. So I'm just going to open up my screen share with you here, start the presentation. So yeah, that's just a little reminder that I'm a qualified teacher. And we're going to start by looking at what mindfulness is. So it's best described as a way of being. So it originates from Buddhism, but it's not any of these things listed on the slide. As I say, it's more about a way of being. And at the bottom of a lot of the slides going through, I've put in references for you, which you can follow up. if you'd like. But I chose this one just to highlight really how mainstream mindfulness has become. There is actually an all-party parliamentary group that looks at the evidence base for mindfulness and makes recommendations to government as to how mindfulness can support the public, both in terms of mental well-being, but also in terms of personal development, and how it can support the economy by supporting businesses, businesses being people, obviously, as well. So mindfulness is a way of being. It's about paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So that's a very famous definition of mindfulness, which is from Jon Kabat-Zinn. So he's a medic in America who founded something called mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's an 8-week course, and it's actually available on the NHS for people with recurrent depression. So I want to work through his definition just to go into a little bit more detail about what that actually means. So let's start with paying attention in a particular way. So mindfulness is always mindfulness of something. So traditionally that would be mindfulness of breathing, of body, of mind, of emotions, various things that you would work through as you develop your mindfulness practice. So the reason that this is important is because one of the kind of myths about mindfulness meditation is that you sit there and clear your mind. And that's such a shame, because it's impossible to clear your mind. And so many people start by meditating, the mind wanders off in every different direction, and they think, oh, I can't do this, I can't clear my mind. And what you do in meditation is you choose a focus for your mind. And the idea is that you just bring it back and back to the same point, but it will definitely wander off. So what this does is this focus just makes us aware of what we're doing. So this is a beautiful definition of mindfulness by a Zen Buddhist master called Thich Nhat Hanh. When you walk, know that you are walking. When you run, know that you are running. Don't think about arriving anywhere, just enjoy yourself. When you take even one step in peace, the whole world benefits. Now, would you remember those days only a few weeks ago, bizarrely, although it seems like a lifetime ago, when we were able to sit in cafes and watch the world go by? And sometimes you would watch people walking and you could see that they were so caught up in their thinking. They were heads down, shoulders hunched, walking really quickly, clearly so caught up in thinking that they were completely unaware of their surroundings. And that is what so many of us do throughout our life, is that we're so busy, caught up in our thinking, that we miss what's happening in the present moment. And just as possibly you've seen somebody like that before and just wanted to go over and say, what are you thinking about? Like, open your eyes. Do you see the blue sky? Do you see the birds? There's people around you that can help. Just lift your head up and connect with what's actually happening in the present moment. And so that urge that you felt is actually at the foundation of mindfulness, is to connect with that present moment. And when we take one step in peace, the whole world benefits, because when we are calm, peaceful, happy, then we're nice to be around. If you think of when you're going through a difficult place and difficult time, who are the kind of people that you want to be with? It's probably the people who are calm, happy, will really listen to you and are very present for you. You can look them in the eye and you know that they're listening. And that's what we're aiming for in mindfulness as well, is to become more like that, more of the time in the present moment, and therefore present for the people around us. So I tell you a little more about Thich Nhat Hanh. When we look at this next picture, so Thich Nhat Hanh is the man on the right. Some of you may recognize the man on the left. You might want to type into the chat box, does anybody recognize who the man on the left is? It's turned into suddenly a history quiz. Martin Luther King, absolutely. So Martin Luther King came out to speak against the Vietnam War because Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a young monk in Vietnam at the time, managed to get to America and had a meeting with Martin Luther King and explained about the great suffering on both sides of the American soldiers and of the people living in Vietnam. and met him again in Paris a year later. And a couple of weeks after that, Martin Luther King spoke out against the Vietnam War, and the peace movement began. And it's one of the great examples to me of what mindfulness represents, is this peaceful, calm inner strength. So some people think that things like mindfulness and meditation are kind of a bit hippie. And there are some forms of meditation, certainly, where it's about escaping from the world. But mindfulness is about engaging with the world. So the only reason that we practice the mindfulness and of coming back to yourselves, being calmer and stronger, is so that you can see things more clearly and then re-engage with the world in a way that makes a difference. But it comes from a place of peace and inner strength. So this non-judgmental kindness, noticing and accepting what's present, seeing what is really going on, is very important to have this compassionate curiosity. So yes, it's about taking action when necessary. So again, mindfulness isn't just about breathing and thinking, right, I'm really angry, this person is really making me angry at the moment, and I'm just going to breathe and pretend it's all okay. It doesn't work like that. What it works like is that recognizing there is great anger in me at the moment. I'm going to take a breath, let the anger settle, and I'm going to accept the fact, well, I am angry, but then use the compassionate curiosity, but why am I angry? What is going on for me here? Am I responding to what is actually happening in the present moment, or is this situation triggering things from my past? So is the anger actually relevant to the person around me? And I'm sure that's happened to you in the past, where you felt that you've said something to somebody and they've responded in a way where you're like, wow, where did that come from? And maybe you can see that they're the kind of person that is suffering, and the suffering comes out in that kind of behavior. And obviously sometimes it's clearer to see in other people, but maybe we're aware of it within ourselves. So mindfulness helps us to become more aware of when that kind of thing happens. And the kindness is because if we take the example of anxiety, which is really my thing and where mindfulness has helped me so much over the years, is that when I become anxious, it's because my mind and my survival instinct is trying to protect me. So when I get overwhelmed with anxiety, it's about helping myself to see what's really going on for me. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and just show you a little exercise, which I can't see you, but you can have a go at this maybe where you are, is to make a fist with one of your hands, which represents the tightness that we feel when we're angry or when we're stressed. We can feel our whole body tensing because we're resisting what's really going on for us. So if I'm anxious and feeling like this, and then my inner voice starts to say, come on, what's wrong with you? You need to relax and sort yourself out. It's as though this hand is trying to just unpick this quite aggressively. And if you try that with your own fist, you'll find that what you do is tighten even more. Whereas if I put compassion, kindness, care, and that's what I imagine in my other hand, even if as I say those words, I can begin to feel that the tenseness in my rib cage and in my abdomen starts to relax a little bit. And if I bring my hand under my anxiety and take care of it, the first thing that I want to do is start to open my fist, stretch my fingers, and release the tension. And that's what they mean by using mindful compassion to hold the difficult emotions. Because when we approach things with that kindness and care, it helps them to soften and release. So let me go back to sharing my screen again. And if there's any questions or comments as we go through, feel free to pop them in the chat box and I'll answer them for you. So the kind of action that I would be talking about there is, if I'm anxious, is that maybe I need to take a break, maybe go and do some walking, shake my shoulders out, let my spine, a bit of a wriggle, release the tension, and let my anxiety drop, for example. So what mindfulness helps us to do is to reset the baseline stress levels. So this is a diagram that was drawn for me by my trauma psychologist who was helping me through my cancer treatment. So I had exactly this time 5 years ago, actually, I was had 5 weeks of radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and the skin damage was so bad that I then ended up in the burns unit at Wythenshawe Hospital for 13 days as an inpatient. And this was what the trauma psychologist drew for me whilst I was in Wythenshawe. So this arousal represents how aroused my nervous system was, because the treatment had been so painful and the burns had affected the nerves just under the surface of the skin. So at this point, I couldn't bear any kind of noise at all. I couldn't watch TV or anything like this. It was just all too painful. Sorry. I couldn't have water on my skin or anything like this. So I was very close to breaking point, which is what she drew across the top here. And when my nervous system was so high, it didn't take much for me to reach breaking point. So even, you know, loud noises and so on, and I'd be at breaking point and in tears. So what gradually happened over time was using the mindfulness just to keep coming back to my breathing, and we'll show you how to do that in a moment, is to gradually reduce it, so that then at this point a loud noise would only bring me slightly up and it would be easier to come back to my baseline. And this is what mindfulness is helping us to do, is to set our baseline stress levels. And we're very used to seeing these curves every day on TV now, aren't we, about how we're trying to flatten the curve to reduce the stress and pressure. And it is the same kind of idea, is that with anxiety, we're trying to flatten this curve to get closer back to a healthier baseline. So when you do a mindfulness meditation practice, we just notice how our mind keeps wandering off to check the horizons to ensure that we're safe. And this is obviously something that's particularly relevant at the moment, because for very good reason, we're all on high alert for our safety. You know, a lot of us, I'm on 3 months self-isolation, and it's even when I go for a walk, I'm like, is that person 2 meters away from me? I think they're a bit too close. Well, now there's a jogger coming past and they're breathing heavily. Am I safe? And am I safe? So what we do is we use something as an anchor, something that feels safe and comforting to bring our attention back to, so that our mind starts to relax and comes to rest. So this is all about me being aware that I'm getting too close to that breaking point, too far out of my comfort zone, and I need to just settle my mind down so that I can respond more appropriately to life. So we'll have a brief practice here, just to find what feels like a safe anchor for you to use. So it's very important that we observe with compassionate curiosity rather than try to change what we find. So you can stop at any time if something feels uncomfortable. You don't have to close your eyes at all. You can close your eyes if you like. It depends which anchor you choose. I'll talk you through that in a moment. But if anything feels uncomfortable, then you just shift to a different anchor. So what we'll do is we'll just settle ourselves wherever you are. You might be lying down. You might be in a chair, and just become aware of the sensation of your body being held by the bed or by the chair. Gravity, keeping you nice and safe. Your feet on the floor, or if your heels are on the bed, the back of your legs against the bed. And your spine, again, maybe just give that a bit of a wriggle. Loosen the tension in your shoulders. And maybe now, first of all, tune into the sounds around you. What can you hear? Is there a noise that feels comforting, safe? Or maybe there's something that you can see. Something that makes you feel a positive emotion, maybe makes you smile. Something safe and secure. And if you want to, You can keep your eyes open and stay on that visual anchor or on the sound. And you can keep your eyes open or closed as you maybe sense how your body feels against the chair, floor, the bed. That sense of being held. And maybe when you come to your body, you sense a very gentle rocking motion. Your body just being rocked by the breath. So in mindfulness, we're just observing with a compassionate curiosity. So we don't take a deep breath, because usually our breathing is very shallow anyway. And maybe there's just a rocking in your belly, rising and falling. You might be able to feel that better if you just place a hand on your belly. And maybe you can feel a very gentle rocking in your spine. In the back of your body. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, you're welcome to open them again. So how did you get on? Was there one anchor that worked for you better than another? What felt most comfortable to settle on? And how often did your mind wander away? It's useful when our mind wanders to notice what we're thinking about. So it might be planning for the future. It might be that your mind is constantly going off saying, what's that? What can I hear? What's everybody else doing? What am I missing out on? Sometimes we're berating ourselves, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. I remember when I first went back to my breathing, my first thought was, well, I'm definitely not doing this right. And of course, my body breathes all the time without me getting involved. So that was a good learning that maybe I'm very hard on myself. So it doesn't matter which anchor felt best for you. It's different for everyone. But it's worth noticing what that is so that in the future, as you feel anxious, you can know that it's good to notice something in the present moment that's around you, either something you can see or hear or feel, even if that's your feet on the floor. And so this idea of, as we sit, we're looking for peace in oneself so that then we can take that out. Yeah, the first time that you do it, it's a little bit strange, definitely. It's like your first piano lesson. You know, the first time that you go to a piano lesson and you're taught how to play the scales, you think you'll never be able to do it. And absolutely, the more that you practice, the easier it becomes. But it's interesting to notice, isn't it, how the first time that we try to actually get our mind to focus on one thing, we notice how much our mind wanders about and jumps about from one thing to another. I remember, well, I'm still amazed a lot of the time what my mind is thinking about and how little control I have over that. And whilst that can be good, it can also get to the point where it's just exhausting. So it's the same idea that when we sit and rest, it's actually allowing our mind to rest too, so that we can get into this state where we are calmer in life and therefore we think more clearly. So the peacefulness is so that we can see things more clearly, think more clearly, and therefore respond rather than react. So that's a good question, Elska, but how often do you think you should practice? Every day or when you have a stressful period? So in terms of an actual seated practice, the research definitely shows that practicing maybe for a few minutes twice a day, maybe for up to 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, or 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night, within 8 to 10 weeks, your brain actually looks different on a brain scan, which is incredible. But you can actually rewire your brain. It's called neuroplasticity, where you can teach your brain to reset that stress response. But I wouldn't recommend trying to put in that much meditation right from the beginning. So I would recommend that whenever you remember, you just come back and maybe for 3 breaths, just count 3 breaths, 3 rocking, or maybe 7 steps where you just feel your feet on the floor. And if you've got your feet on the floor now, can you just flex one foot and then the other foot against the floor? Taking your whole attention to how your foot feels against the floor. So as though you're walking. And really notice all the muscles in your feet. Maybe a sense of the bones inside flexing. And if you're lying, of course, you can be flexing your feet as well. And for some people, the physical movement is easy as well. So in terms of, if you think back to the first definition of mindfulness as a way of being, a way of living, is that when I wake up first thing in the morning, I'm aware of my mind leaping ahead into the day. And I just remember to smile and just lie there and just kind of let my body be rocked and enjoy the warmth of the bed for a little while. Just feeling my breathing and then letting my mind settle. And then when I settle, then I get up and then I feel my feet on the floor, the texture of my dressing gown as I take it off the end of the bed. I look out the window, open the window, feel the air against my skin. And in other words, I'm starting to try and approach the day calmly rather than rushing into it, which is my natural personality. So what you can do, and you'll see as we go through to tonight, is take just the way that your life is at the moment and pay a kind, compassionate attention to it as you do each of the different things that you're doing. So one of the things when you notice that your mind wandering, this is what I have stuck on my fridge, is this little thing of, is it true? Are you sure? Because our mind has a wonderful habit of spinning stories about the things that it experiences. So Breathworks, who I'm training with at the moment and who do wonderful courses, particularly for managing chronic pain, talk about the idea of primary and secondary suffering, which traditionally would be known as firing the second arrow. So what this means is that the first arrow, or the primary suffering, is something unpleasant happens to us. Secondary suffering is how our mind creates stories around that unpleasant experience. So when I had cancer, what was obviously really very difficult to manage was my fears around the cancer, where my mind would run away with, but how am I going to be, there's only an 80% chance of cure for this kind of cancer, and that's 2 people out of every 10, and there's 10 people in this room, and which one am I going to be? And all of these concerns about the future and how I'd be left after the treatment. And it was really, when I looked at it, the idea of this is for me to see that most of my suffering was caused by my mind running off, telling stories. Is it true? Are you sure? No. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And that was so helpful to have. That's when I wrote that postcard originally, was at that point, so that whenever I found myself worrying about the future, that little question, are you sure? And more often than not, I could smile and say, well, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to be. And so it's very much true that we create so much of our own suffering. I'll give you another little example of, remember back at school when we were told, it's school assembly on Friday, and we each got to say one line. And some of the people in the class would be thinking, oh, amazing, this is my chance to shine. Other people weren't really bothered one way or another, felt quite neutral about it. And other people, this was the worst thing they could have been asked to do. So that one thing that happened the first thing, that first arrow was, you have to say a line in the school play. And then all of the secondary suffering is because of the way that we interpret something which in itself is fairly neutral. So this idea of primary and secondary suffering isn't just around the big things in life, which are obvious a form of suffering or anxiety, but they're also for the day-to-day things. And sometimes this secondary suffering, this habit of spinning stories, is so sort of ingrained in how we feel that it's difficult to spot at time. So mindfulness enables us to mind the gap between something happening to us and us reacting to it. So this idea is taken from Vipassana Meditation, where you have these 4 stages of response. So the first thing that happens is that something happens to us, and we probably feel it. Well, we do feel it on a physical level, maybe a surge of adrenaline if it's anxiety. So you sense something and you immediately label it as pleasant, unpleasant, or indifferent. So it would be something like, well, now I'm feeling anxiety, but I don't want to feel the anxiety. Why do I feel like this? What's wrong with me? So that gives a feeling to this potentially short-lived feeling of anxiety, which if I don't spin the story, is just this very quick flash of anxiety. But if I have started to spin my story and my mind has adopted the feeling, I can develop it very quickly into a mood or an emotional state. So I go from feeling a flash of anxiety to being anxious. And once I am anxious, my mood colours my thoughts, behaviour, my view of the world. Because once I'm anxious, I've got closer to that peak of the curve, and the world seems like a scary, difficult place. And other things that happen on top of it make me more anxious because my baseline is now anxiety, which is becoming overwhelming. So that idea of that first physical rush becoming an emotion that if I can step back from and see more clearly means that I can start to free myself from the energy of mindless habits. So this little drawing is a reminder of a very ancient Buddhist story, like all of these great faiths. There are some wonderful stories within them. And this is there were 2 men walking towards a village, and galloping towards them on this wonderful looking horse was this rich man. And as he galloped past them, they shouted, "Where are you going?" And he looked back and shouted, "I've no idea, ask the horse." And the idea is that, I don't know if that feels familiar, but quite often I feel as though I'm just being dragged through life on a galloping horse on a route that I didn't particularly choose. And what mindfulness enables me to do is to just take a breath, is to slow down the horse of my mind as it gallops off in all these different directions, and just to calmly look at it and say, do you know what, why don't we just rest here? So I managed to get off the horse and hold it like this man in the picture, and we can enjoy some peace together, to look clearly at what's happening, and maybe together we can walk off down a different train of thought to a place that's more peaceful, where I can respond rather than react to life. And there is a wonderful organisation in the UK called the Mindfulness in Schools Project. And the way that they explain this idea of stopping and calming is that they suggest that we take a .b. So this is just to stop, like a full stop. And then we breathe. And then we just allow ourselves to be. So they use this with children. This was actually a presentation by John Kabat-Zinn that I heard quite a few years ago now in London for Mindfulness in Schools conference. Is this idea that as we feel that surge of anger or anxiety or other strong emotion, is as we feel it rising, we just take that breath. That enables us to mind the gap between the emotion pushing us to act or speak in a certain way. And in that moment, the emotion rises like a wave and then drops away again. And then we can say respond rather than react. So that might be a useful way for you to remember it as taking a .b. And when we are anxious, another technique that we can use is this idea of moving out of the branches, which are flailing around in the storm of emotions, and come back into the trunk of the tree. So I used art therapy to help me process the trauma of my cancer treatment, and this was one of the not very good drawings, but were significant to me at the time, and still is. I have it next to me while I speak to you now. It's on the bookshelves to my right. And what it was to remind me to do was to come into the trunk, come into my abdomen, to feel my breathing lower down, and to feel my feet on the floor. Imagine roots from underneath my feet down into the earth, making me feel safer and more secure. So when my anxiety threatened to pull me up into the branches in the midst of a storm, this was how I remembered to come down into the trunk and then feel safer. And you can see I painted myself with my arms up, because that represents the freedom that it brings me. When I come into the trunk, when I feel safer and more secure, I'm free of my anxiety and therefore happier, more able to enjoy life. So that's the technique that's talked about in the online course that Simon mentioned, which is called Mindfulness for Anxiety. There's a short video of me explaining that to you if you want to refer back to that in the future. So as I was preparing this this webinar for you, I was wondering which meditation I'd like to share. We only have time really for one more practice this evening. 3 days a week I work for a brain cancer charity as their research manager, or I did until I was furloughed about 10 days ago. Hopefully we're going to be going back to it. So I'm definitely somebody that likes strong evidence base. So the rest of my time I teach meditation, but it's from an evidence base, both from my own experience of how it's worked for me, but also very much from the scientific literature and what's been proven. So this is one particular one that I felt was really powerful. It's David Gallis talking in his book Mindful Work. And he was wired up to an EEG machine at one of the universities in America who are doing a lot of research in this area. And it was this experiment, this meditation that we're about to do together was shown to quieten the posterior cingulate cortex. So that's an area that activates when we're judging ourselves or dwelling on the past or telling ourselves those stories about our own lives to the point where we don't notice what's going on around us. Or back to those times where we're so caught up in our thinking that we can't notice the blue sky and singing of birds and the beauty of springtime around us, the kind of things that make us feel more peaceful. So it's called a Metta meditation or loving kindness. And the way it works is that we start by wishing ourselves well. And this isn't a wish as in, oh, I wish I was well. It was just as though you say happy birthday to somebody, or I hope you have a great day. It's that kind of wishing ourselves well. And then we wish the same for people whom we know. And we wish the same for all sentient beings, beings that can perceive or feel things. And the reason that I've chosen this as well is because when I find myself worrying about my own health or about the health of others around me, which is obviously incredibly pertinent in the times that we find ourselves in now, when I find myself worrying, then it's good for me to catch myself and think, oh, okay, so I'm feeding my anxiety now by worrying about this in a negative way and worrying about whether or not they're going to get ill. So actually, if I flip that round to be more positive, then what I actually want is that I want to wish them well. I really hope that they say well, and I wish them with all my heart to be well. And the same for myself. I really wish myself well. And so it starts to reframe what's potentially a negative way of worrying about people into something positive. So this time, as we go into this proper meditation where I'm going to read the words to you, they'll be on the screen, so you're welcome to keep your eyes open, or you can just allow your eyes to gently close and just listen to my voice. It's whatever is comfortable for you. And before, if it felt nice to focus on the rocking sensation in your body, of your body being breathed, maybe feeling that in your abdomen or in the back of your body, in your spine, then you're welcome to be aware of that. But if it felt more comfortable to focus on something that you could see or something that you could hear, then you can keep your eyes open, or you can be aware of what you can hear alongside my voice. They all work equally as well. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. And if at any point you feel uncomfortable, obviously just open your eyes, come back into your room where you are. So first of all, we allow our mind and body to settle. quite often when we come back to our mind and body, it's as though we're a jar that's been all shaken up, and the contents of the jar, maybe sand and water, are all mixed up together. And when we sit down to meditate, we just allow the sand just to settle to our abdomen, filling up our legs, our feet on the floor, that lovely feeling of warm sand beneath our feet. So as we settle into that, we start the first part of the meditation just saying quietly inside our heads, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I be free from suffering, happy, healthy, safe and free. And we can use the rocking motion of our body so it becomes almost like a lullaby. Happy, healthy, safe and free. Happy, healthy, safe and free. And if you can say it with a smile, happy, healthy, safe and free. And as the words start to sink into our bodies, and we actually start to feel the pleasant sensations of those words, we can then extend it out to everyone we know. May everyone I know be happy. May everyone I know be healthy and safe. May everyone I know be free from suffering. Happy, healthy, safe and free. Happy, healthy, safe and free. Happy, healthy, safe and free. And gradually broaden that awareness to the whole world. May all sentient beings be happy. May everyone be healthy and safe. May everyone be free, happy, healthy, safe and free. Happy, healthy, safe and free. Happy, healthy, safe and free. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, you're welcome to open them again. Some of you might be asleep, and some of you may want to share. You're welcome to type into the chat box if you'd like to, how you found that. And again, what held your attention most effectively? Was it the words, the rocking of your body, something you could see? And when your mind wandered, hopefully you could smile to it and just bring it back. It's a bit like training a puppy. Your mind wanders off and you smile because it's kind of cute, you know it's doing it for all the right reasons, and then you just bring it back and let it settle. Thanks, Callum. The words in your voice are very comforting. Yeah, I'm glad you find the words comforting. This is one of the most famous meditations that people use, Metta, love and kindness meditation, because it has a very powerful effect in terms of making us feel safer and more secure, of building compassion for ourselves and others. Thank you, Simon. A bit of everything, the words, your voice, the gentle pace while still, peaceful and safe. That's wonderful if you picked on that, the feeling of safety. Yeah, it's definitely how it works for me. And that's part of the being kind to ourselves, isn't it? Is recognizing that what we need in the midst of all of this at the moment is that feeling of safety, of solid ground. Yeah, nice to wish everyone else well. It is, isn't it? Putting out that positive energy. We probably all participated in the clap for carers just before we began. And it is a lovely feeling, isn't it? To really wish them well, to express gratitude and appreciation, and to feel the people around you doing the same. Yeah. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about this idea of positive energy and of noticing what makes us happy. So I don't know if any of you are gardeners and recognise this seed on the left-hand side. They always make me smile. It's a calendula seed, so it looks a bit like a smile with lots of funny teeth poking out of it. And it grows into the beautiful calendula marigold on the right-hand side. And this is the idea that we have seeds of lots of different emotions within us. So I have seeds of anxiety, which I can feed if I spin myself anxious stories. But I also have seeds of happiness. And if I water those seeds, they become stronger. And the happier we feel, the more resilient we are. Because what we've done is reduce our stress levels to a line where we can think more clearly and therefore respond rather than react to life. So there are various ways that we can do this. And one of the things that we recognize is that happiness is like a butterfly, is that it comes and goes. It's not normal to be happy all the time. And yet quite often, without really realizing what we're doing, our life becomes this huge pursuit of happiness. And we somehow berate ourselves for when we don't feel happy, like, what is wrong with me? I like that, yeah, Simon, about the feeling connected as you feel a wider and wider circle of people. Thank you. Yeah. And this connectedness is something that when we start to connect with the present moment as well, we become more and more aware of how we're connected to everyone, everything around us. And when we get those moments of happiness, we can feel them like a butterfly. I don't know whether you've been lucky to see any over the last few days. They've just come out in my garden. I'm feeling so grateful to have a garden at this time. And for there to be butterflies, and the butterfly flutters in, and I just think, oh, this is wonderful, a butterfly, it's so lovely. And then it floats away again, and my happiness kind of drops a little bit. And then a different emotion will come, and then a different emotion, and another one. And so this feeling of allowing our emotions to ebb and flow means that we can find happiness more easily because we're not holding on to our anxiety or our anger. So there's room for another emotion to come in, and gets us more used to this idea, as I say, of things flowing through life. So there was a game that I developed whilst I was in my hospital bed in the Burns unit 5 years ago, which was called Appreciating Windowsills, which I've now developed into an app that you can download and play along with. And it's called this because when I was in my hospital bed, I was in such pain. Just like, okay, so I can feel my breathing rocking my body, and now I just need to connect with what can I see? And the first thing I saw was a windowsill. I thought, okay, come on, Kate, 3 things that you appreciate about a windowsill. Because I knew that those feelings of gratitude and appreciation would reduce my stress levels, and the less tense that I was, the more that my pain, my sensations of pain would drop. And it was a funny windowsill. It was really high up, so I could only see the sky, and the windowsill was sloping. And I just thought, oh, what a weird windowsill, because my ones at home are flat. And so the things that I appreciate about windowsills are when they're flat, I can put little trinkets on it that my children have bought me over the years, and that carry memories for me. And I can sit on them if the windowsills are big enough. My cat can sit on my windowsills and look out. And if there wasn't a windowsill, I was lying in this hospital bed thinking, I wonder how windows would stay in with no windowsills. And so I started to go off down this track of kind of slightly bizarre appreciation thoughts about windowsills. And when I came back and checked on my pain was less. And so I thought, okay, this is working. So what else can I see? And I just started to look around my room at what else I could see. And then I started filling notebooks with the words, and the words are what have gone into the app so that other people can play the game as well. So maybe we can play now with one of the words in the app is sunlight. So could you maybe type into the box something that you appreciate about sunlight? And what's strange is that most people at this point go, sunlight, I have no idea what I appreciate about that. And that's so strange, isn't it? Because every day we see sunlight, and yet we've never stopped to think what we appreciate about it. The heat on my face, the warmth. Yeah. Anything else that people can think of? The shadows, yeah, absolutely. The way the sunlight falls, light on my face, freshness, absolutely. I love that moment when I wake up and I look over to the window and you can see the sunlight coming around the edge of the curtains. You think, a nice day. The sun has risen. Increases the detail, absolutely, of what you can see. And sunlight gives us energy, of course, through solar power, but also without sunlight, we'd have no food, and we couldn't convert the food into energy. The colours in the garden, absolutely, absolutely. And yes, another day, yeah, the absolute delight of another day, living to see another day. And the darkness disappears, the sunlight comes up. And then one of the things that we can do is to start to focus, I mentioned the darkness there. So there's a free version of the app with 24 words in, which are all quite easy to feel positive about. And then the second app's got 200 in, which have some more challenges words like darkness. And most of us are frightened of the dark. But then if you flip it around to think, yeah, but if the dark wasn't there, what would life be like? Then we can start to think of things that we appreciate about the darkness. Because imagine if it was sunlight all the time, that wouldn't be good either, would it? And if we have the darkness, we can draw the curtains. And I love walking outside and seeing the lights on in the houses, the stars and the moon. Yeah. Oh, I like that. The warm curb you can sit on. That's lovely. You must have drinking a cuppa, yeah. And a cup of tea is something that I definitely really, really appreciate. So that's one way of creating happiness in every day, by literally looking at the things around us. And I think particularly in this crisis, it's really emphasised, hasn't it, that all the things that we took for granted only a few weeks ago. Buying toilet paper. Who would have thought 6 weeks ago that buying toilet paper could bring us all such happiness? But now when it's back in the supermarket, you say, oh, wow, I'm winning at life. I've managed to buy toilet paper. So we can find happiness in the most strange places, and places where it's just a shift in perception, where we can start to smile more and see the happiness just from all the things that we normally take for granted that are around us. Oh, and pasta, definitely. Who'd have thought that so much joy could come from pasta, and that everybody loves it so much? Amazing, amazing. And how it will be when we can go out again and sit in a cafe will just be extraordinary. And all those things that we just took for granted will just bring us such joy. And that is really the key to all of this, is holding on to that sense that if I just lift my head up and see what is around me, then I can experience this joy without waiting to win the lottery and do all those big things that we think will bring us happiness. So as we start to notice these happy moments within our lives, it's good to make a note of at least 3 things that make you smile each day. So in tests, people who express gratitude for 3 things each night for just 1 week were happier and less depressed that 1, 3 and 6 months later. Because what it does is it starts to train your mind to, instead of scanning the horizon for things that are signs of danger, your brain starts to scan the world for things that make you smile. And so on my website, there's a free happiness calendar where you can type in the 3 things. So this is how it looks on a laptop screen. You just type in the first thing, second thing, third thing. And then when you come back the next day, they will have moved across into the cloud. And we've used cloud technology that it builds up. I'll show you what that looks like. The second stage is that you choose a colour from the Manchester colour wheel. So this was invented or developed rather by Professor Peter Warwell and Dr. Helen Carruthers at Wythenshawe Hospital as a way of recording mood states in patients, some of whom didn't have English as their first language, and it was difficult for them to express the subtleties of how they felt. And we can all choose different colours, and it's fun when you play with it on the website. Obviously you can access it on phones and iPads as well as on a laptop. Then you click on the colour and you can quite instinctively think, oh no, that's much too bright and that's not how I feel today. But if you don't, then you can just skip this step. For some people the colours don't work for them. But then when you save the colour and it starts to build up, so this is how mine looked on my phone a couple of days ago. So this is what I put in my happiness calendar, hanging out the washing. I love that. Butterflies. And then it was the night of the full moon. This was a couple of nights ago. And so you can see here in the cloud how the things that I put in most often appear larger. I was using this on my phone where I can easily put the little icons in as I type. And daffodils, I planted over 300 daffodils in my garden in the autumn. I bought a big mega mixed sack on special offer, and at the time I was like, what have I done? My garden is tiny, why on earth am I planting all these daffodils? And now I am so grateful I planted those daffodils, because I just wander around the garden and enjoy them. So they are coming up better. And there's my my cup of tea. You can see that that's come up larger here as well, because that joy, as you said, is of holding a warm mug of tea in your hands is something rather lovely. And here you can see the colours begin to build up. And what you notice is that even on a day that's quite difficult, maybe, well, certainly as I was going through my cancer treatment and my recovery, I would definitely have days where I would choose black to represent that was just the most difficult of days. And even on those difficult days, though, I could think of 3 things to appreciate, because those tended to be the days where just somebody making you a cup of tea was like, thank you. And somebody seeing what you were going through would be even more emotional, really, on a difficult day than on an easy day. So expressing gratitude and appreciation helps your brain to focus on the positives, as we've said. And tracking your moods illustrates the normal ebb and flow of emotion. You can see it's possible to find moments of happiness on the most difficult of days. And what this does is it starts to reduce our worry about what the future may hold and enables us to enjoy the present more. So one of the questions earlier was about how much practice. And I would say the easiest way to practice is to connect with the existing rituals that you already have to create space in your lives. So as you sit on the curb, that nice warm curb that you can feel below, you can feel the sunlight on your skin, feel the warm cup of tea in your hand, and experience happiness in a deeper way maybe than you could before, just by consciously taking your focus into this present moment and therefore touching the happiness that maybe you couldn't see quite so clearly before. And here is a lovely quote to end on from Octavia Hill, who founded the National Trust. We all need space. Unless we have it, we cannot reach that sense of quiet in which whispers of better things come to us gently. And particularly pertinent now, where maybe we can't go to the parks and visit the trees and the open spaces that the National Trust looks after. But what we can do is find that space within our everyday lives, within the 4 walls that we live within. By just changing our perspective, we can take a breath and find the space that we need just to think more clearly and appreciate the happiness that maybe we didn't notice before. So if you'd like to know more about anything that I've touched on this evening, I've got this Mindfulness for Anxiety course that we'll send you the link to. It's an online course that I made free at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, and it will remain free till the end of June. It's a Udemy course, which means you can access it whenever you like, as I say, and you can watch the videos in any order, bookmark the ones that you find most useful. So the link is on my website on the events page. And this was actually from a couple of days ago, so it's increased now, but even 2 days ago, it was being used by people in 65 different countries, 16 different languages. So you'll be in good company if you'd like to enjoy back whenever it feels right for you. So if you have any questions or feedback, you're welcome to contact me. Here are my contact details. And of course, I'm here now. So if there's anything that you'd like to put into the chat box, any kind of feedback or any questions that you still have, please feel free. And I'll stop sharing so that you can actually see me again. Here I am.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay.
That's a pleasure.
Now, did you see, it may be that you did cover them and I'm getting in a muddle, but let's see.
Thanks, James. You felt it was really good. Sorry, have I missed some questions?
I'm just making sure. So when you were doing, where are we? Elska, how often do you think you should practice? We've got to be careful with that word should, but how often Elska's interested in the idea of, I guess, if you're developing, and would it be every day? Would it be when you're having a stressful period? So that's a really good question. Can we come back to that if you did touch on it already?
Yeah, of course, of course.
And
And the question below from Martina is similar, isn't it? Is it best to get a routine, and how do I remember to ground myself with this? Absolutely. Yeah. So what I would say is to find, we call it a bell of mindfulness, not a physical bell, but maybe it's every time you boil the kettle, is that you actually stand and settle yourself. You can see me settling myself in my chair there, and watch the kettle boil. So instead of doing what I would normally automatically do, is you flick the kettle on, don't you? And you go off and do a million things, and you come back and you can't even remember whether it's boiled or not. It's just, you flick the kettle on, you stand there, feel your feet on the floor, see what's happening in your body, shake the tension out from your shoulders and your spine, and then watch the kettle boil, and then enjoy choosing the mug, choosing the drink that you want. And of course, if you're just taking a cold drink from the tap, is that maybe that's your bell of mindfulness. Come back, see what's happening in your body, what's happening, feel your feet on the floor, maybe place a hand on your abdomen just to feel the gentle rise and fall in your belly. Or if when earlier as we were practicing you found that sounds were easier or something to look at, then maybe there's something, you remember I had the little note, is it true, are you sure? That was like a little bell of mindfulness for me that was on the fridge. And when you get used to it on the fridge and you stop seeing it, you move things around. So I've got something in front of me now as well that I can show you. Yeah. Peace begins with your lovely smile. And that is sitting on my desk here, so that when I'm caught up in my work and caught up just running from one email to another, I glance up and I see that peace begins with your lovely smile. And that reminds me that maybe what I need to do is to just stop for a minute and stretch, maybe get up, walk around, and reconnect with the present moment with mind and body. I've got a nice big stone here which has got a heart on it. That's something as well that maybe I hold if I'm particularly anxious, because it's nice and heavy. Brings me back into my body, a really definite anchor. So you can have things like that around your house that remind you, or you can actually pick a time that feels right for you. So as I mentioned, is that as I wake up, I take those few moments lying in bed just to breathe through my body, to come back into myself before I begin the day. And then actually what I do as well is at 8:30 in the morning, I meet some friends on a Zoom call. There's 4 of us that meet every morning at 8:30. We check in with each other, see how we are, and then we just do a 15-minute meditation together. We take it in turns to choose a meditation. And then at night, I do another meditation, and I do a combination. Sometimes I just use ones where I happen to know the words to because I've done them so many times, or quite often I use a recording, and there'll be a list of resources sent out to you of recordings that you might like to use. But also I'm a member of Sanghas. So in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, it's the Plum Village tradition. There are groups of people of all faiths or none who meet together on a weekly basis to practice mindfulness meditation. And I go to 2 different Sanghas every week. So 2 nights that's 2 hours worth per night. So it's about an hour's worth of meditation and then chat and sharing and supporting each other. And that sense of community is incredibly important. So the answer is my suggestion would be, is to be really gentle with yourself, to not put a should in there. Just start with just whenever you remember, just taking that time to come back into your breathing, to connect with your breathing anchor, whether that's your breath, your body, sounds, what you can see around you, maybe using gratitude and appreciation to come back to that. But if you're the kind of person where having a routine and listening to meditations feels like a positive, supportive thing to do, then do that. There are some beautiful body scans to use before you go to sleep. And that for me was an easy way in, because then I just knew that I was really looking forward to the end of the day where I could lie down, listen to the meditation. But we'll share some resources with you as well.
Great stuff.
So regularity is definitely, like all things, it does definitely help you develop your mindfulness practice most effectively. It's just the same as if you were learning the piano, is that if you practice every day, you get better more quickly than if you practice only every now and again. But it's important to have a rest day as well. The monks and nuns at Plum Village always have one day off a week, just the same as in the Christian tradition, we have the Sabbath, where it's a day of rest. And that is a rest from practice, unless, of course, you enjoy the practice so much that your day of rest is when you want to spend your day practicing.
Can I just share something? Would that be all right?
Yes, of course.
I've heard people talk about focused practice, and then being mindful through your day.
Yeah.
So two different ways of
there are.
Experiencing mindfulness. Is that something worth?
Yeah, that's a really good way to explain it. Yes. So a seated meditation, actually listening to a meditation recording or sitting down to concentrate. But you can also use a walking meditation, I would still qualify as a kind of a focus practice, where you actually think, right now I'm going to practice mindfulness meditation. So what you're practicing is this idea of bringing your mind back, calming. That would be a focused or a formal practice. And to get what the evidence shows is that if you practice twice a day for at least 10 minutes, preferably 20 minutes at the beginning of the day and 20 minutes at the end of the day, then you will definitely find it, the benefits are stronger and more quickly. As I say, so they've done experiments where people have done, they did the brain scan at the beginning. They did an 8-week mindfulness course and were meditating every day. And by the time they did the brain scans 10 weeks later, you could see the physical difference in their brains. I mean, it's quite amazing how quickly we can achieve that. It's less than the time that some of us are going to be in isolation for, isn't it? We could have changed our brains by the time we get out. So other mindfulness techniques, my page, yes, there'll be a sheet that we will email around that gives you the links to not just my own course, but there's another free course by Breathworks that's available at the moment. John Kabat-Zinn is doing live sessions every week. There's an awful lot of free mindfulness out there at the moment. If you Google it, you'll find some incredible teachers giving stuff away for free. But my online course is maybe what you were referring to. And yes, the course called Mindfulness for Anxiety that I've recorded. I recorded it 2 years ago, so you'll see me looking a little bit younger in it. That has lots of other techniques in it, yes, all around managing anxiety. And the videos are also of some of the techniques that I've explained tonight. But yes, Simon, you're absolutely right. There's kind of, what we're trying to get to is that we live a mindful life, that it's natural that as I make myself a cup of tea, I'm aware that I'm making a cup of tea rather than thinking about a million other things, because there's a difference between constructively planning for the future and just being lost in our thoughts. And so in order to reach that mindful life is that it's easier if you do the kind of the formal practice. But I think it's a mistake to think of, if I meditate in the morning and the evening and then just carry on with life as though nothing had happened, we're kind of missing the point a little bit, is that this is about actually enjoying life more. And hopefully that helps.
Yes. It's a sense of fun and curiosity.
Absolutely.
I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. That's the thing, is that as you start to do it, it's just, wow, I never saw life like that before. So it should never feel like a chore. One of the things that really changed for me is Thich Nhat Hanh did a beautiful video, and he talks you through like how to sit formally as you sit for practice and everybody's very serious and listening, and we get to a certain point, there's a long pause, and then he just goes, "This is nice, isn't it?" and laughs. And it was a real turning point for me, because I thought, oh, of course, like the reason that I meditate is because it's nice to meditate, not because I think I'm going to be a better person if I meditate. Does that make sense? So just as when we did the meditation there, and you know, quite a lot of you fed back to say, oh, you know, I really appreciated that practice. I felt very peaceful. I felt very calm. That's why we meditate, is because it feels nice. And if we do it because we enjoy it, then it's not a practice. It's a nice thing to do. We look forward to it. And that's a really important distinction, is it shouldn't feel as though, oh, I've got to do my mindfulness practice. You'd be like, wow,
yeah,
these days are nice to sit down and breathe. Is it better to do mindfulness with friends or by yourself? My mindfulness community is just invaluable, absolutely invaluable. So because they're people who are like me, they're trying to approach life in a way where we practice deep listening. So when somebody speaks, we really listen to what they're saying. And if we want to jump in and we're judging, we're aware that those thoughts are coming from us. If we listen deeply, we learn more. And so to share what I'm going through in my life with people who are responding to me in that way is very special. I don't find that anywhere else outside my mindfulness community. And also what I learn from listening deeply to other people is very humbling. To have people to really share with you who are having a very different life experience from you. I learned so much. So that's called the wisdom of the Sangha. It's like this shared knowledge and understanding. So the mindfulness community is very lovely. However, I also enjoy meditating by myself sometimes as well. And most of the time I meditate by myself. And that allows me to really be with myself and to choose a meditation that feels right for me in that moment. There are so many lovely ones to choose from. So it's a combination of the two. There's never a right or wrong in mindfulness. It's about tuning into what's right for us as individuals.
I'll give an example, just if that's all right, Katie. Just like when I was starting out with mindfulness, because so if I went for a walk with my wife and we stop, and the sun might be setting, and we're both just enjoying watching as the sky changes, as the sun drops, especially if there are some clouds, it makes it more interesting than just sun and nothing else. Now, while I'm sort of being in the moment and just appreciating everything that's going on, that's me being present, that's mindful. I got challenged because as soon as I maybe take a picture of it or even say to my wife, oh, isn't this beautiful? I've stepped out of just being in the moment. Is that a fair comment?
It is a fair comment, yeah. But I think we also have to be realistic about that. And that's adding to our happiness, you know, is that to say to the person next to you, isn't this wonderful?
Yes.
I don't think that pulls us out of the moment. I think that often enhances the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Share it with somebody.
So you don't have to do it with others.
No.
And I guess one of the key things, Katie, that you said is, if it becomes like a chore, then it's not, you know, who started something new, whether it's at the start of a new year and you set a resolution, we don't carry on doing things that we don't enjoy. So find a way, because it'll be, and if you explore Katie's resources, there are some exercises will appeal more than others, won't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why there's a selection there. And that's why there are so many meditations out there. But what's interesting as well is not to feel that you have to use a different meditation every day. So what I tend to do with my own practices is that I choose one meditation, and then that's the one that I use morning and night for a whole week, and sometimes longer than that. Because each time you go back to the same meditation, you get something different from it. There are meditations so I've been practicing in this particular tradition, the Plum Village tradition, for about 7 years now, something like that. So some of the foundation meditations, honestly, I don't know how many hundreds of times I've done them. But when I look at how I responded to them the first time I heard them, to how I responded to them last year and how I respond to them this year. And even day to day, it can be very different. And a meditation that I've done so many times, then somebody else will read it and I'll suddenly go, oh, I just never thought about it like that before. And it's as though that particular day it's gained more significance for me, or I've interpreted it in a slightly different way, gained a little bit more insight. So that's a very Western tendency that we have to always be wanting new. And this is nice, just as I say, you keep going back to the comparison of playing the piano, you know, you can play the same scale again and you can play it slightly differently, hear something differently. The spaces between the notes make the music.
Yes. No, that's really, really helpful. I think it's for people, you know, where mindfulness is new, there will, if we're not careful, it's very easy to get some preconceived ideas. So I'm really pleased that you've been able to sort of debunk some of those myths, and it's something that we can all enjoy.
Oh, absolutely.
All
Children
of us.
are brilliant at it. Yeah.
Yes. I've heard that up to the age of 8, children just live in the moment anyway.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and as an adult, there's a balance. But a really useful way of thinking is that you can still be very present whilst you're planning for the future.
Yes.
And you tend to plan for the future more effectively and respond to the challenges of life more effectively when you're fully present and feeling safe and secure. Yeah.
Are there any more comments or questions, colleagues? I have shared in the chat some links for some resources. You can, hopefully they're clickable links, but otherwise you can copy and paste, but the links will come in an email as well later this evening or maybe tomorrow, but some more resources. Katie, the link for the anxiety, mindfulness for anxiety, is that a simple link that I can pop in the chat now, or?
Yep. If you're, are you online? If you go to soulnutrition.org, or actually, here you go. I've got it here. I've got it in my browser.
I'm just looking to see where I find it.
So if you go to Soul Nutrition, there it is. I've just popped it in the chat box. So if people can click on that, that will open in their browsers. But it's soulnutrition.org, and then you go to the events page.
Ah, the events page. Great. Fantastic. So again,
just there.
And Katie, you've been very kind and made that a free course, haven't you, at the moment?
Yes. Yeah. It normally retails at $39.99, but it's free now throughout the crisis. So yeah, it's good to reach more people.
Yeah. So if you would like to, because I think, you know, as you know, okay, I'm hosting this session, but I'm also a GP, and certainly the last 2 or 3 weeks, lots and lots of people that I'm talking to, you know, patients with whether it's heart or lung or other conditions that mean that they're more vulnerable. This is a difficult time, very difficult.
Very much so. Very much so. And yeah. I really identify with that feeling of vulnerability. You know, as my cancer was a viral one, so and I've had pneumonia, and my boyfriend's got sarcoidosis. So yeah, like a lot of people, we're feeling very vulnerable, really vulnerable. And you know, and I remember so clearly when I wasn't sure whether or not I'd survived my cancer, and without mindfulness, I honestly don't know how I would have got through it. I really don't, and that's why I teach it. I was teaching it before I got cancer, but it's interesting when the chips are really down what you really turn to. But for me, actually, is the happiness calendar, which is the free one on my website. Is that practice of gratitude and appreciation when I'm in a really anxious state is the one that I come back to time and time again. Like I shared, you know, is when I was in my hospital bed and even morphine wasn't doing it, you know, it was like, right, appreciation. And it is astonishing what it does for physical pain. Absolutely amazing, because as soon as your mind relaxes, your body relaxes. And then of course you don't have the pain, because normally with pain and fear we tense around it. So whenever I had a symptom of my cancer, and for the people listening, you know, I'm sure that the patients, you know, when you have one of the symptoms, the fear of now what is happening is that we do this with our bodies, we tense, and that makes the pain worse. And so to have something where I could think, okay, I can't breathe now because this is so painful and I'm really frightened. Just think, okay, what do I appreciate? And the more that I distract myself and think positive things, I can feel my body opening, and the pain lessens. Mm. So it was invaluable through my healing as well. You know, I healed much better than was expected, and I'm sure that's part of it.
That's very interesting to hear. And there has been a lot of research, hasn't there, showing that if you can do little bits of mindfulness, it doesn't have to be sort of 45 minutes or big commitments. Anything you can do regularly, if you can get into that habit, we know it can make a demonstrable difference to your immune function as well as your well-being and how you get through the day-to-day.
Yeah, actually the most profound thing, which sounds so crazy, is that I just used to smile at my body. And to smile, so you start with your head, and I smile to my forehead, smile to my eyes, ears, nose, mouth, throat, and work through my whole body, and particularly where I had the cancer. And at first that was really hard to smile to that bit because you just feel as though that's the part of your body that's letting you down. You know, so to smile to the parts where the pain is difficult at first. And the advice is just to touch the pain very, very, very briefly, and then move your attention away, and then come back and you smile briefly and you come away, and gradually you get used to staying with where the pain is. And when you start to go into where the pain is, you can feel that there are lots of different sensations. So when you really start to look at it calmly, you're like, okay, so my pain is kind of a mixture of tingling and buzzing and a bit of an ache, and actually quite warm, and that warm bit is actually quite a nice warm sensation, even if this bit isn't a nice sensation. So that compassionate curiosity starts to kind of unravel the pain, and I got to the stage where I was no longer frightened of my pain. Whereas initially the pain would make me frightened because I would spin the stories about, what does this mean? Is the cancer coming back? I don't think the treatment has worked, and I'm never going to recover from this. I'm never going to be the same again. And so my fear of the pain added to the pain. And this smiling practice was, it's a scanning, it's called a body scan, but with the smiling element was very profound, very profound.
Is it worth touching on the issue that I have asthma, so if my asthma isn't good, I'm very aware of my breathing, and a lot of people who may have heard about meditation and mindfulness may have heard that something to do with the breathing and paying attention to your breathing, and that's not always easy if breathing can be a symptom of you not being well. So
no.
Do you want to just touch on that? I know we've kept away from that, but I thought it might be just worth touching on before we finish.
So that was why when I did the practice tonight, because I'm aware that breathlessness is a symptom of heart valve disease, and that might have triggered some fear for some people. So that was why I talked about feeling the breath right down in your belly. So you take the emphasis away from your lungs to just feeling this flexing, this rocking within your body, which is obviously the breath. But if you're focused particularly down the back of your body, down your spine, helps you to tune into the gentle rocking of it. But what's very important with mindfulness, which I did mention, but you're right to bring it up again, is that we never try and change our breathing. So that's very, very different from a lot of breathing techniques where you're actually, trying to change your breathing. And some of those can be very valuable, but mindfulness is different. Mindfulness is about this compassionate curiosity. So if you're experiencing breathlessness and you take your attention to your breathing and you think, wow, I'm really breathless. If you respond with fear, it gets worse. The practice is to think, okay, so here is fear arising because I'm breathless, but if I let that go and settle down, then my breathing is okay. And you get used to the fact that you are experiencing breathlessness without that triggering a fear response. And now you're really living with your condition. So if as you have asthma, but the important thing, of course, with something like asthma, or maybe something you're doing is triggering it, then you've also got that insight of, wow, I'm coming back to my breathing and my asthma isn't feeling good here. So I'm not going to respond with fear. I'm going to respond with, wow, I wonder why it isn't good, and what have I done, and what could I do to ease that? And maybe that is to feel my feet on the floor, or maybe that is to move out of this space that I'm in at the moment, which is making my asthma worse. Or maybe I need to rest more. Maybe I need to use my inhaler. So it might alert you to a situation where you could use medication earlier, and therefore potentially at lower doses, rather than letting it get to the point where you're just like, no, it's all fine, until you get to the point where suddenly you need a lot of pain relief, for example. So it brings you into a more kindly relationship with your pain. I'm aware that I've talked for a long time, and I hope people aren't too tired.
I've just had the noises off saying, "Are you still on?" So I think I don't see any more questions or comments. Please, before we finish, it's a fantastic opportunity to ask Katie a question with all Katie's experience. And as I say, you will get an email. If you have any follow-up queries, anything, you can email office. My email will be in the email that you will get as a webinar attendee, whether you're watching live or the recording. And if you have anything for Katie, you can obviously contact her through her website, and she shared a link for that, or email office and I'll forward it. You might have questions that come up afterwards. And thank you again for your hugely generous offer, Katie, of that course. So the link is there, and I'll pop the link in the follow-up email if that's all right. Katie.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody who's shared through the chat.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone. I hope you sleep well. I'm sorry we've kept you a little bit later than maybe we should have done, but
no, I think lots to mull over, and there will be a link to the replay as well in the email, because there may be things you'd like to come back to on the replay and have a little look. So thank you, Elska. Thank you, Callum. And there's a link. There'll be a link in the email, but also I've shared the link in the chat. And I think if we set this up properly, you will see when we close the webinar, you'll see in your web browser the survey page. Isabel says, "Thank you very much. It's been wonderful."
Oh, thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, Isabel. Please do complete the survey. This is for Heart Valve Voice. Heart Valve Voice are looking to see how can they support the community of their members and associates. And this was one way. So there is a box. It's a very short survey, but there is a box where you can make suggestions if there's something else you think that Heart Valve Voice could bring on a webinar like this. Pop the suggestion in the survey, because I know the charity is keen to do as much as they can to support you through this difficult time. That's one reason why we've been able to come on this evening with Katie. Thank you, Katie.
A pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Will Wone and Callum. Thank you to everybody who's taken part. Special thanks to Katie. Please do the survey, and because the feedback is really valuable. And you'll get an email with your own personal survey responses for your record if you like. And hope to see you on another Heart Valve Voice webinar in the future. Stay safe.
Thanks very much, everyone. Take care. Good night.
Bye-bye.